Hey YouTubers, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a Q&A. It's been a little while since we've done this, and I've had quite a few questions accumulated. I really appreciate the response that I get from you guys, and I apologize if I'm late in answering your questions and concerns, but I endeavour to do so this evening. And I also, before we get too much further into our Q&A, I just want to give an appreciative thank you to all my viewers and all my subscribers. We had a goal of 1,000 subscribers and we've exceeded that, and we also had a goal of 500,000 views and we've exceeded that as well. And so we seem to be growing, and I just wanted to say thank you for the interest, and I'll continue to put out more informative videos and respond to your concerns the best that I can. So let's get into our questions and answers for this week. So the first one, it comes from Steve Rupp. And he says that he's been using Zinsser primer, and he asks, is there something that you can do to avoid the primer drying so quickly onto the brush and making it difficult to work with? And so my response to you, Steve, and whoever else may be experiencing this problem, is that there is something we can do. And you may not just experience it when you use the Zinsser primers. You may experience it when you're using 100% acrylic paint or stain. And you may also experience it even more if you're working outdoors and it's a windy day or a sunny day. But it seems that the wind will dry up paint quicker than the sun will. So how do we retard or slow down this drying process that occurs on our brush before it seems we can hardly get the paint on? Well, what I would suggest is that you buy a glaze product that you can buy this in the paint store. You might not be able to get it in a hardware store or a big box store, but at a specialty paint store you should be able to buy a product called latex glazing. And what it does, faux painters use this, and what it does is it slows down the drying process so that they can create faux patterns in the paint, and the paint doesn't dry up before they can create this pattern or effect in the wall that they're trying to achieve. So what you do is you dip your brush into this glaze and you work it into the ferrule of the paint. Perhaps I'll do a video on this in the future. Now, failing that, if you can't seem to find this glaze product, look for an extender, a latex paint extender. There's a brand called Floetrol. Also a company called Dynamic Supplies has a latex paint extender. And what that does is it extends the drying time. And the same thing, it extends the drying time of latex paint. And you just have to look at the instructions on the bottle as to how much you need to put in the paint itself. But what you can do if you're using 100% acrylic or quick dry primers is to dip the brush in this product, work it in again, work it right into all the bristles of the brush, right into the metal part of the brush, the ferrule. And this will coat the bristles of the brush, and it'll help the paint release as you're working with it, and it'll also help you clean your brush easier at the end of the day. Now also, if you're working under extreme conditions, such as I mentioned, the weather, whether it be heat or windy, you may have to clean your brush out at the midpoint of your day, at lunch break or whatever. So don't be afraid to give the brush a quick flush out, but when you do so, dry it out the best you can, and then apply another application of the glaze or the latex paint extender. So I hope that helps you out, Steve, and any other viewers there. I know it's a problem, especially with today's paints. I encourage using latex paints, and the ones that are really well suited for outdoor applications, but they are formulated in such a way that they dry quickly and they dry hard, and they make the brush difficult to work with if we're not really quick about getting the job done. So not to say that you're slow, but I know things take time, and hopefully this will help you get the job done with less frustration. Okay, so the second one comes from Wes S, and he watched a video entitled "How to Paint Square Spindles," and he says, when you're filling the holes with caulking, do you need to get the old paint out of the holes or just caulk over it? Okay, it's a good question. We definitely want to prep our surfaces, whether they're spindles or what have you, and they might be old, they might be uneven surfaces, and we want to sand the surfaces, especially if we don't know what kind of material is on there. We want to give it some tooth, even with the new formulated acrylics that tend to stick to everything. We don't want to necessarily rely on that, especially if we're using a low or middle range product. So depending on what material we use, we can always do good prep. But as far as holes go, we wouldn't expect you to dig out the paint from the holes. If a hole is deep enough for you to caulk, then that's all you really need to do. As long as it's full, as long as there's nothing, no air behind it, or dirt or sand or water or whatever that could affect it from behind. So what's more important than scraping that paint out is to make sure that there's no grease or water or loose dust or debris in the hole. As long as it's vacuumed out or brushed out to your satisfaction, then we can go ahead, caulk it, and then of course make sure it's fully dry, and then we can go ahead and paint. Okay, so our next one is Cara Westgate, and she asks, how do you sand your pine products? And I guess she was responding to a video that I did on how to stain pine furniture. And so basically, when you're dealing with a finer application, when we're not in construction, we're not talking about doors or window frames or door frames or baseboard. We're talking about finer things that have a sand finish. We have to be concerned with swirls, like marks that machines make, such as orbital sanders or even palm sanders for that matter. We can use them, but we got to be careful that we sand out any machine marks that may have been made, and that includes what we call swirls. So what I tend to do when I'm staining furniture or anything that's finer, anything that's within eye view, I just use my hand basically and sandpaper, not the sanding sponges that we use in construction. So use good quality sandpaper, sand with the grain. If you find that you have trouble conforming or have trouble getting into difficult places, you can use a tool of some kind to back up the paper to give enough pressure on where you're sanding. But always sand with the grain. That's the golden rule. And I generally use coarser paper if the wood is dirty or if it's being pre-painted or stained, and then I go gradually finer. So what I mean by that is maybe start with an 80 grit, go to 100, finish with 120 or 150 grit sandpaper. So hope that helps you, Cara, and all our other viewers. And so I'm going to sign off from this Q&A. Until next time, it's been Craig, the Muskoka Painter.